The Agenda in the Summer with Nam Kiwanuka is made possible through generous philanthropic contributions from viewers like you. Thank you for supporting TVO's journalism.
Worthwhile initiatives don't always go as planned. I'm Nam Kiwanuka. Tonight on the Agenda in the Summer, writer Naben Ruthnum on his searing comic novel, A Hero of Our Time, exploring diversity and inclusion in the modern office. Diversity is our strength. It's a motto, it's true, but it's also complicated, and it's that last part that occupies the characters and themes of writer Naben Ruthnum in his new novel, A Hero of Our Time. He's a writer who's tackled everything from television to horror. This new book is both funny and deadly serious. And Naben joins us now for more. Hi.
Hi.
So reading this book, terrific book, by the way, there were many parts of it that were very funny. But there were parts of it that made me very uncomfortable. What do you think we can learn when we are uncomfortable?
Oh, I think that is where that space of discomfort is when you have to start talking to yourself during a novel. That's when it starts getting into that higher level of communication that I think only fiction is capable of, because it sort of sends you into yourself and you begin to ask, like, why is this making me uncomfortable? What is it challenging about my values necessarily? And also, what does it mean about the people in my life? Was
it intentional to make the reader a bit uncomfortable sometimes?
Absolutely, yeah. I obviously stole the name from Lermontov, the Russian writer, and it actually came from the introduction to his second edition of his book, A Hero of Our Time, where he said that readers kept on telling him, "You're a disgusting man," because clearly this character is based on you, this protagonist. And he would always say back to them, "It's not based on me, it's based on you." So and he was kind of having his cake there too, because there's a lot of his own life in that book. There's a lot of my own life in this book too, but there's also a lot of what I see around me.
I was going to ask you about that, about why you chose to call it A Hero in Our Time.
Yeah, I mean, I really wanted to complicate that idea of sort of the heroic person of color main character, which we get in, not just in Canadian literature, but certainly in Canadian literature. It's really going against the grain in a literary novel to have a main character who's a person of color, who's also kind of a scumbag. And in this case, Osman, he does see himself as being a crusader in a way, but he also is, not just flawed, but mean, not evil, but a bad guy. And everyone around him, the villains he sees himself as taking down, they're certainly kind of scummy too, but there may be more optimism and more forward-looking in the villains in the story than there are in the heroes.
You did mention that the book represents parts of you. You've just described who Osman is, so would you share which parts? Not to put you on the spot or anything.
I think there's a bit of like the sort of super acid humor and certainly the sort of inward-looking self-criticism. I know actually people who've been close to me have had trouble reading some of this novel because they feel the most brutally self-critical parts. It really does remind them of me. And then also it makes them think, does Naben talk to himself like this? Sometimes Naben does joke to himself like this, but I certainly don't have the same, length of fang that I think Osman does.
Oh, because Osman is really self-critical.
That's right, yeah. And it often comes out in this, what I think is probably the most troubling part of the book to a lot of people. He's so violent with himself about his body, about being really uncomfortable and disgusted with how he looks. And what I'm trying to do there, obviously, is show something about how being defined by your outward identity, by everyone around you, eventually makes you alienated from your own body and identity. And I was sort of exploring that with what seemed to be cheap jokes about his appearance from himself, but really you eventually realize, like, he doesn't have any idea what he looks like or where he is in the world.
Well, let's talk about the book. The narrative begins with Osman telling his coworkers, again, like a self-deprecating joke about being a darker-skinned person and something that happens at the airport. Can you tell us that story?
Yeah, he has this sort of pet story that he uses at conventions and at business lunches, things like that, where he just talks about how hard it is to get on airplanes all the time because he's always late, he's always sweaty, he looks nervous, he makes security nervous, and of course security at airports is geared up to be suspicious of brown men anyway. But he tells his story to make white people uncomfortable, essentially. He's making the joke, and it's okay for him to make the joke, and he enjoys being able to control when they can laugh and when they can't laugh. Obviously, there's a little something there about being a writer too, and being someone who tells jokes as well. Like there's an appeal to that, but what I have Osmond point out and what I point out as a writer is if you're taking real pleasure in that power of making people really uncomfortable in a real life situation, as opposed to when they're just reading a book and questioning themselves, you're not a good person.
Well, after this story is told, it puts Osmond in conflict with another executive, a female executive who's white, who takes this story and she kind of makes it her very own story. How would you describe the conflict that develops between the two of them?
Yeah, Olivia Robinson is that sort of, well, what Osmond would view as the antagonist of the novel. She's the villain. She's a mid-30s white woman who's extremely efficient, extremely good at her job, and she's also realized that diversity politics, even if it's not her own particular diversity that she's talking about, can be used to sort of
climb the ladder?
Exactly, leapfrog up the ladder in her case. And she sort of immediately spins Osmond's story and her response to it as a way to talk about what's wrong with the company and how she can fix it.
What did you want to say about the nature of office culture in a time where the terms diversity and inclusion seem to be foundational?
I think what I'm trying to say is that, you know, diversity is just the latest power tool among many other things. I mean, diversity is also wonderful. It affords people opportunities. It's a great thing. But anything that can be used to leverage personal power is going to be used to leverage personal power. So what I really wanted to talk about here, not in a didactic way, was it's okay to question the use of diversity politics for power without us thinking that if we question anybody, everything's going to fall apart. We're going to lose all of our progress. And I really thought that a really playful way to do that in this book would be to use someone who's white to question these things.
I mean, it does get messy. We'll get a bit more into it. But, you know, the pandemic actually, work culture kind of shifted during the pandemic. It kind of gave more power to employees. Before the pandemic, employers had all the power. We've heard about the Great Resignation, which is an example. How would you describe the office culture at AAP, the company that you feature in the book?
It's based on like the couple of times I had friends who were actually working in Silicon Valley in tech firms. I got to visit them a couple times, and I found it so hilarious that they both wanted to promote this atmosphere of fun and, you know, all gourmet snacks. Yeah, coolness, gourmet snacks in the break room. Here's like a vintage Capcom Street Fighter II game. By the way, you're working a 70-hour week or you're fired by your third month.
But Street Fighter.
Exactly, yes. And so this sort of balance of having this capitalist boot on your neck, and not just capitalist, but like hardcore, we need to make $1 billion this year. And you're gonna be contributing to that no matter what. With this idea of like, obviously we're also super progressive. This is a kind, warm place. This is welcoming. You can't have those two things be compatible. So I wanted to portray an office culture where everybody knows that they're fighting tooth and nail for survival, but it's also supposed to be this comfortable family.
Well, it leads into my next question because there is a lot of nastiness between the colleagues, but then they all seem to kind of be drawn back together. What would you say the motives were for that? Was it money or was it power?
I mean, that's one of the ultimate questions of this book. It seems that the people who actually are most interested in progress they know that they're driven by power. They need power in order to make progress. And the people who thought that they were driven by progress eventually realize that the game of power is so difficult that they'll just be satisfied with a lot of money. So I think the people you see coming together in the book initially are like, we're going to fight what's above us, and then eventually they think, we just need to get out of here. And in order to get out, to exit the game, you need as much money as possible.
As much money as you can amass during a certain time.
Exactly.
One of the things that I really appreciate about this book is that you challenge how women are stereotypically seen. You know, the women in the novel are ambitious. Some would say that they misbehave and do things that women shouldn't. Even Osmond's mom, she's not like a helicopter mom. She doesn't pick him up when his life is in pieces. Was that intentional?
That was absolutely intentional, especially with his mother, who's, I think, one of my favorite characters, and a lot of readers, that's the one they gravitate towards most. I'll part the curtain a bit. A lot of the editors who passed on this novel when I was first sending it out said, we just wish there was more of his mother and more of the sort of openness and warmth that we get towards the end of the novel. Not warmth, but openness and truth-telling. And of course, that would have ruined the novel to me. Like, I think you need to put that off until the end. And having her be at this remove and not be this kind of mom who wants to be in her son's life, and who really reminds us of what so many South Asian mothers are in South Asian diasporic literature, that was important to me. I wanted him to have a different kind of attachment to home, and I also wanted his mom to be as tired of him as the reader sometimes gets.
Or even Osmond seems pretty tired of himself.
Exactly. Yeah.
I can't tell you the amount of times that people have judged me based on what I look like, what my politics are, just by looking at me. And in the book too, you kind of touched on that. Olivia assumes that Osmond is Muslim, and then she seems to convince him that he actually is, in fact, a Muslim. What were you trying to say about diversity and inclusion there?
Well, that's a moment where she's basically tacitly suggesting to him, even if you're not Muslim, if you build that up as part of your image at this company, at this particular moment where we're having this sort of diversity front-facing pressure, it's going to help your rise in the company. And of course, to Osman, coming from like a complicated South Asian background with two extremely secular parents, he sees that as both incredibly perverse to pretend to be part of this religion that is incredibly meaningful and a real identity to so many people. And also he recognizes it's a damn good idea. Like she really does know what she's talking about. And it's a temptation for him for a second. And it's also a realization that, it's like the pile of arms in Apocalypse Now. He realizes, I can't win against this person.
That no matter what you do, how you are seen, if someone is convinced to see you in a certain way, that's how they see you.
That's right, and also that it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. If you can control your identity and your image, and you can take whatever somebody sees of you and use that to your own advantage and separate yourself from being seen as something you're not, you're going to acquire some power that you didn't have before.
Well, speaking of control and identity, you go by a pseudonym, Nathan Ripley. Why two names?
It was a very practical / adolescent childish decision. When I was young, 14, I thought, I'm going to write these genius Nabokov Salbello novels, of course, because I had the arrogance of youth. But I also wanted to write, werewolf movies and in crazy horror fiction. And in order to do that, I thought, I'm going to need two names. So I chose the name Nathan Ripley. Nathan kind of sounded like my first name.
Yeah.
Ripley is from Aliens, which I, love.
Ripley's Believe It or Not? Do you remember that?
That too. But yeah, no, it was Sigourney Weaver. That's where I took that from. And yeah, but then as I got older and was like, actually, you know what? I am writing thriller novels. And I do want to write very different fiction and nonfiction. The pseudonym still makes sense, but I realized there's actually a charge to this now because it sounds like a very waspy New England name. So I know.
Does that give you more? Do you feel like that gives you more leeway, more room to breathe?
I did certainly at the time feel like it. When I was 27, first starting to send out work, I felt people are expecting a certain kind of South Asian. I miss the homeland. My mother's cooking was wonderful, but I can't quite connect because I want to have a white girlfriend and I want to, be a Westerner as well. A lot of those books are great. A lot of them are terrific. I've never written anything like that, and I probably never will. And I was thinking, Nathan Ripley's never going to face that pressure of having to write a certain kind of book. But at the same time, it's come up more recently. For example, the next book I have coming out is a book for young readers, and it's sort of like a supernatural thrillery thing. On the one hand, it kind of makes sense for my pseudonym to be on that book, but the main character is a young South Asian kid who shares so much about my childhood, and it would be so weird for the book to be by Nathan Ripley instead of Naben Ruthnum. So pseudonyms are complicated.
Very complicated. But some years ago, you wrote a book of essays entitled Curry, Eating, Reading, and Race, in which you questioned commonly accepted ideas about ethnic writers. What were you objecting to?
That sort of pigeonholing that I've been talking about, that idea that, we have our genres. We've got mystery, we've got romance, we've got horror, we've got thriller. Those are very reader-facing. They help people find what they want to get. And, in more recent years, say since the 80s, South Asian diasporic fiction, following Rushdie and Arundhati Roy and all these brilliant writers, that's become a publisher's category. That's that's a box to tick. Like, we need a couple of these this season from this publishing imprint. And readers come to expect certain experiences from those books. I was getting more and more anxious at the time, at the very beginnings of my career, that unless I could fit a book that fit what I thought was this category, I would never be able to publish. To some degree, I was not right about that. You know, I was really exaggerating it to myself, and the proof of that is there are so many writers of this origin, like Rumen Alam, Ayad Akhtar, who write very much individualistic works that are just like themselves. And now I've gotten to do it too, but it really did strike a chord with a lot of brown and white readers and Asian readers and black readers and writers saying, like, I feel this pressure too. And I'm getting tired of telling the same story or being told the same story.
And it doesn't seem to be that a new thing. A journalist once said to James Baldwin, who's one of my favorite writers, that he must have seen himself as being disadvantaged because Baldwin was black, he was poor, and he's gay. And Baldwin responded, no, I thought I had hit the jackpot. It was so outrageous, you had to find a way to use it. But then also, Baldwin was, he also said that one of the reasons he left America and went to Europe and lived in France was that he didn't want to be known just as a, quote, Negro writer. Is it possible for a writer to rise above other people's perception of their ethnic, racial background?
I feel that in genre fiction, it's entirely possible. For example, in horror fiction, my latest little book is a novella called Helpmeet, and, you know, my race hasn't come up in relation to that at all. Like, it's not part of the discussion, which is interesting. This book dives fully into race. It's about race. It's about identity. So, of course, it wouldn't make sense to really separate race from the discussion there. I think it has to be, it's not a question really of transcending identity. It's about expanding our idea of what a writer's identity is beyond race. And I think...
Shouldn't it be the work that is important? Or you can't separate the two?
I don't know if you can, you know, because the work, you know, the life is part of the work. Of course, the life goes into the work, and identity and race is inextricable from your identity, from who you are off the page and what you bring to the page. And also when, you know, when I'm on a show or when my books are being discussed, it's never going to be just about the book. It's going to be about who made this and why are they interesting. And I have, as a reader, like I'm fascinated in the biographies of the writers I admire most, of course. So I don't want to say, I feel like it would be claiming a privilege that I don't give the writers I love to say, I just want to be evaluated by my work and to be a complete cipher.
And maybe it shouldn't be something that we kind of push back on. If you happen to be an African writer, you're an African writer, and?
Absolutely, yes. And it just, the idea that term comes with any sort of limiting factors, that, oh, this is what African writing is, so this writer must write that kind of thing. That's what I'd like to push back against. But, you know, I think the way to do that is good books that aren't what they seem.
Some time ago, you asked in a tweet, is any nuanced position on identity politics and art guaranteed to be perverted and abused by repellent people? And then you answered the question, yes. Who are the repellent people, and why do they have this way that they do?
Oh, that's funny. Boy, that's a trap. The reason I word those things like that is so I don't have to name names. But but what I can say is most of the people who use novels, who use artworks, whether it's a debate about censorship or obscenity or identity, most of them who use them to sort of do a woke versus based culture politics war discussion don't read books, don't care about art, except as game pieces. And you'll see that in most like sort of opinion columnists, like super right, super left people. You'll see this sort of gamesmanship when it comes to art. And that's what actually kind of upsets me most, is that these guys they're not going home and you know, not reading the latest woke novel because they love Philip Roth so much or because they love Balzac so much. They're just using it as a game piece, and then they go home and, you know, play board games or video games or hang out
watch
with the kids.
Real Housewives, because
exactly.
I know judging.
Yeah.
Because that's my...
The early New Jersey seasons or something.
They're pretty good, right? And Teresa just got married.
Oh, good for her.
Yeah, good for her. This fall, you start a gig as writer-in-residence at Sheridan College. What will you be doing at Sheridan?
I think the thing I'm most excited about is sort of just one-on-one looking at student work and answering student questions about, how the heck do you make writing a major part of your career or make writing all of your career? Like in my case, I do a lot of screen work as well. And before this, I worked in ad copywriting as well as doing, my novels and things like that. But I'll also be bringing in writers from all different walks, like poets, copywriters as well, and people who are way more successful than me in screenwriting, to just sort of talk to younger writers in a changing media climate about how you actually do this.
Well, I don't know if you've watched like American Idol or Canada's Got Talent. And sometimes when I'm watching those shows and they're singing, I'm like, dude, you don't have any friends, because they should have told you that you do not have a voice for
That's
the
right.
stage or to sing.
Yeah.
So when you are a teacher and you are obviously teaching the craft, what do you tell, how can you tell if a person has a gift for writing?
I mean, to me, a gift, it matters in singing a bit, of course. But when it comes to writing, like, I don't have a gift. I'd call it maybe a knack for dialogue alone, but I learned my craft through, reading a lot and writing badly for many years until I wrote well. So that's something I always keep in mind when I'm looking at student work, especially when you're dealing with someone who's 19, 20, or even when someone who's 50, who's only been writing seriously for a year. There's no way for me to say this person definitely doesn't have it, which is it's a reassuring feeling. So when I'm looking at a piece of work that, this is not publishable, I can always find something in it that I can tell the student, like, this is what you need to develop. And by the way, you probably also need to start reading way more, because it's only going to help.
Well, you said that you didn't have a knack for writing. So what was it that made you push yourself to become the writer that you are now?
I think just it being the thing that mattered to me most, great writing, great books, and continually just sort of finding myself in competition with this past, with the idea that I could, start to write against the writers that I love most, start to use their ideas and build a book out of their books. And that's what I think I've accomplished, at least that with A Hero of Our Time, that you can tell this is a book written by someone who loves literature and who borrows from it, not plagiarizes, but borrows greatly from the ideas and techniques of other writers of the past, and puts that in a very contemporary situation. So that's been very satisfying about writing this book. I feel that I actually made something of, all these thousands of books that now clutter my apartment.
Well, is there something about a writer's life that appealed to you?
Yeah, that's in the past tense. Certainly, Martin Amis has this quote where he says, like, the writer's life is intoxicating and free. The novelist's life, it's intoxicating and free for him because he got those, nice 7-figure 1990s advances. But my life is free, certainly, and intoxicating when I'm at a bar. But it's not. It's hemmed in somewhat by financial exigency, because I don't have security, I don't have benefits, I don't have all these things. So the thing that I look forward to most, the freedom, is also the thing that's a bit scary about the profession, is because ultimately nobody cares.
Is it worth it?
Absolutely, yes.
Why?
Because I get to decide what I want to do every day, and it seems by now, 5 books in, I finally I feel sure enough that I am going to continue doing the work, and ultimately I don't have that doubt in myself now. That I never had the running out of ideas doubt, but I did have the running out of energy and desire to keep going doubt. I don't have that anymore, which is nice.
And then you don't have regrets. I always feel like you regret the things that you didn't do.
That one's tougher. Sometimes the things when I'm, not spiraling, but doubting, thinking about how life could have been different, especially after the latest obscene real estate market jump. Maybe it would have been nice to have a union job, for 10 years in there, put a nice down payment down. Could I have perhaps written as well as done that? I think the answer is yes. So you don't expect it to become too late to make these decisions until you realize how early too late is. I'm 40 years old now. I don't know if I'm getting a union job anywhere. However, things have gone well enough in my writing career that I feel that, it actually finally, having gone through these difficult periods and these various slopes, it actually now feels like it was worthwhile, and things are going to eventually pay off in the way that might afford me the security that I want.
As I get older, I think of that saying that that youth is wasted on the young, because when you're young, you feel like you have all this time, but in actuality, life just starts to blink.
That's right,
You know,
yeah.
writers are known as being, you know, hyper individuals. You're by yourself in the attic, the basement, maybe it's Starbucks, but you actually have a writing partner. How come?
Yeah, when it comes to screenwriting, I have my writing partner, Chris Burton, he's Halifax-based, and it just allows us both, because he has his own other writing career, writing short stories. He has collections with Biblio Oasis, and a really successful comic series called Hobtown. We, working together, can generate so much more interesting material and like finish things so much more quickly. And also we have a sensibility that goes together. And most of all, though, it feels really different from writing alone. It feels a bit more like punching in at a job, and in this case, somebody else does care, and somebody else is counting on me to do my part. So,
But what if you want your idea and they don't want your idea?
well, you learn quickly in TV film that it doesn't matter anyway, because the producer's going to take that idea away from you at some point. So
The same here. It's the same. I know what you mean.
Right, yeah. You
I'm
can't,
joking.
You can't be. It's a very collaborative business where nobody gets to be precious. So it's great if that starts with your co-writer, who's also your best friend. That you can have this really open conversation and fight where you don't have to sort of manage the relationship. And yeah, it's a very important part of my life and career.
We have about 30 seconds left. What are you working on now?
I'm working on a sort of weird hybrid horror literary novel.
Sounds perfect.
Yeah,
Well, hopefully you'll come back and talk to us about it.
I'd love to.
Thank you, Naben. This novel is excellent.
Thanks.
Excellent. It's funny. Like I said, it makes you uncomfortable, but it also makes you think. Thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it.
Great, thank you.
Coming up on the agenda in the summer.
I'm interested, and what the book is interested in are those sort of gray area traumas or sexual trauma, sexual discomforts. What happened at the pool party was, I think, to some degree, very troubling and traumatic for all three. There were three of us involved in the whole scene. And it's always, I don't know who was wrong or right.
And that is tonight's agenda in the summer. I'm Nam Kiwanuka. Thanks for watching TVO and for joining us online at tvo.org. And we'll see you again next time.
The Agenda in the Summer with Nam Kiwanuka is made possible through generous philanthropic contributions from viewers like you. Thank you for supporting TVO's journalism.